Welcome everybody. So look, I'd just like to run through some housekeeping matters first. So this meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. There are some safety procedures on the screens in front of us, which I'll just give you a moment to read and familiarise yourselves. Today we have one councillor attending online, Councillor Wood. So keep the camera turned on and microphones muted unless addressing council. You have your voting devices in front of you, and I'm sure you're familiar on how they work. Any text for amendment should be emailed to the committee administrator, and officers, when you're presenting reports, please provide your name and role before speaking. So I'd like to open the meeting formally and ask Councillor Zaberlin to commence with a karakia. Thank you, Councillor.
Morena tātou, me e noi tātou. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauriti tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa. Haumi e, hui e, tā e ki e, kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll now move to apologies, and we have a recommendation on the screen that the committee receive the apologies from the Mayor and from Councillor Dennison for late arrival. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Naylor, seconded, Councillor Harpeta. So we will now put that to the vote. So that has been carried unanimously. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, notification of additional items, which I'm unaware there are any, and there aren't. Any declarations of interest from elected members? There are none. We have no public comment today, so we'll move to agenda item 6, confirmation of the minutes of the 11th of June, the public component of that meeting. And do I have a mover? Councillor Naylor, seconder, Councillor Harpeta. Are there any comments or issues arising? There are none, so in that we'll put that to the vote. We have a recommendation in front of us. So that's been carried unanimously. 10 for with 3 abstentions. So we'll now move on to agenda item 7, which is the adoption of the annual report. And we'd welcome Scott Manser, our Manager of Finance, and Debbie Pereira, Audit Director, to the table. Welcome. And we're in your hands.
Cool. Good morning, Mr. Chair and elected members. Really excited to be here today with our complete and audited annual report. The 24-25 financial year was year 1 of the 24-34 long-term plan. And with that in mind, and taking on a little bit of feedback from last year about the process, we've approached it with a refresh this year. So we've worked really closely with our activity managers across the organisation, and they've all provided us with several bullet points about their activities for the year and the key highlights. So my first thanks is to those people across the organisation who took the opportunity to take that chance and provide a much more concise and a readable set of bullet points to talk to what our council activities are for the year. Then from that point, Liv, our communications manager, has taken those bullet points and developed a story that you can see right the way through the document, and making that a heck of a lot more readable than previous versions. As we wanted to reset the document with this LTP in mind, we've made it more readable and accessible to our readers. So we've also put that through a graphic design process. So we've been really, really lucky to have an internal resource that's fully designed this document into the shape it is. I think the previous annual report had about 6 design pages in it, and now we've got 280 odd design pages in it, which is just phenomenal, and it looks really, really cool. So a huge shout out to Mark and our graphic design team under the guidance of Jess, our marketing manager, for that work, which has been really, really cool. We've also really pushed some timelines internally with that team. So I know the wider team and Jess and Liv's teams and marketing and comms have really supported that process right as we've got right to the wire and the crunch point of this. Speaking finally to the financial results and the audit, there have been no major changes since the fourth quarter report that was presented to the Strategy and Finance Committee in August. So I think that's probably just about a record for this council as well. I think the only movement was on the balance sheet, just tidying up the valuation. We didn't quite get the estimation right, so there's been no changes except for presentational ones in this annual report, which is really pleasing. You'll see in the paper that we noted a couple of performance measures that were inadvertently missed through the quarterly reporting, and the audit team picked those up. So those have been added, and we tweaked a result based on the testing of that as well. So good process there to catch those. And probably just a really final shout out to my team, Matt and Karen, sitting over the back there, for making this process go as well as it has. They certainly have made my job very easy for doing this by having that quarterly reporting as accurate as possible it is through the year. There is a date in the agenda. I just have to change. I think it reads at the moment the 25th of September for verbal clearance. That should be the 26th. Just didn't quite come through to Debbie as soon as it did last week, so we just have to correct that, and we could note that in the minutes. That'd be great. Finally, before I pass over to Debbie, and she'll talk more to this, but this is our first clear audit opinion in 5 years. So there are no qualifications on this audit opinion, which is a really, really outstanding achievement. So without that, I'll pass over to Debbie to talk to that.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, it is my pleasure to be sitting here today. This is the end of my 6 years that I've been on the audit, so I'll be handing over to my colleague, Chris Webby, who is also based in Palmerston North, so I will introduce him to Council and to yourselves in due course, but that will be probably in the new year. But I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate Council and the Scots team for a fantastic product that you do have in front of you. And I'd also like to just reflect that we are a month earlier than we were this time last year. So we were sitting at the end of October, 1 week before statutory deadline, and then I think you adopted right on statutory deadline. So bringing, not only is it a refreshed annual report, but it's also a more timely one. And probably part of that was really bringing the revaluations, infrastructure revaluations forward. It's a process that happens every 3 years, and it can be quite a process and quite time consuming. So getting that out of the cycle when we're actually trying to audit the annual report has really assisted with that. As you've heard, we've got a clear opinion. There is a couple of emphasis and matter, but that they are emphasis and matter for all councils that have the uncertainties around the future of water delivery. So you have signalled that you're going to go into a CCO with a number of other councils. So it's still working through that process. And so this annual report does not reflect that, but you do actually have a well-documented note, 37 I think it is, that outlines your process. So we're just really highlighting that to the reader, but we're doing that for all councils in your situation. The other one that we have is the greenhouse gas emissions, and just that there's some uncertainties in the calculation of that. You do report both citywide and organisational-wide greenhouse gas emissions, and so you've got a note yourselves, and we just reference to that. But yeah, I would like to say thank you for the assistance that we've received from your team. We do appreciate it. Cool.
Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Scott and Debbie, and thank you for the report and congratulations. So we'll throw that open to questions, and I have Councillor Naylor.
Thank you both for the report. A few questions here. Firstly, on page 14, the high-level overview of the financial overview. Now, on page 15, in the increase in net debt, it says the actual net debt increased by 22.4 million. So initially, when I saw the overview on page 14, I was quite confused because it says net debt increased 31.5, and it wasn't until I read the small print under it that says lower than the budget increase of 55. So it's talking about the difference between what was budgeted, and I'm just wondering if it would be clearer for it to say net debt increased 22.4 million, so that it's consistent with the next page, and it doesn't, yeah. To me, that's what you would first most likely understand if you read net debt increased. You'd want to know how much it increased by rather than... So if we want to make some small changes like that, do we just mention them now, or what would be the process?
Yeah, if you could mention them now, we'll note that one down and we can change that number, and we'll just tweak the subtext below to correctly
lovely.
reflect that, so we can take that one on board. And if there's any others, we can do that as well.
Thank you.
Assuming they don't impact the auditor's work.
Yeah, no, there's not many. There's just one other that's similar, or a bit different, on page 20, and there, that being the net debt by year, the 2019-20 year of 138 million, the graph takes it right up to look like it's about 149 million. I'm not quite sure why, because the rest of them look fairly accurate, so I just wonder if accuracy would be quite important when it comes to numbers.
We can have a look at that one. That one's obviously just snuck through a review, so yeah, we'll change that.
It's in the summary document on page 343, the same graph as well.
Thank you.
My other questions relate to, I'll go to page 165. So there's quite a few places where, under the rating allocation, the line that says less provision for debt reduction, it's quite different to the long-term plan. It is quite different to the actual. So that page, there's quite a few pages where it's quite different, but that one is $5.4 million different. I'm just trying to, I haven't been able to work out why the debt reduction is so different to the long-term plan. It's not, this is just one example, but there's quite a few.
Yeah,
it's right through the document.
Yep, so there's two things there. Obviously, the interest rate changes the proportionality between interest and principal repayment, so that's one of the main drivers. This particular page, though, you'll remember through, I think it was the first quarter report, we had to update the overhead model due to a bit of an error in the long-term plan. That's that coming through, so we have to report the long-term plan published figures, whereas the actuals are based on the updated allocation, and you remember that was all to do with the loans and the organisation performance activity.
So the provision for debt reduction overall, how is that shown somewhere in the overall numbers? Sorry, I was looking at each separate one.
There is an overall one, I'll just have to pull up that page.
I can, I'm happy to come back to that if,
So it's on page 179 in our cash flow.
as in the repayment of borrowings? The
Yes,
28,000?
28 million.
Sorry, 28 million. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and just moving to page 191. Apologies if this is, yeah. So I'm trying to understand the loss on derivative financial instruments that makes the total finance costs. So that overall cost is 21.2 as opposed to 14.4 last year. Oh, sorry, actual 21. Oh, that's sorry, forget that one. I might have been reading it wrong. So the 25. I'll come back to that. So my other question relates to the 2.5 million write-off, which we discussed at the finance meeting also. So the 1.3 million that relates to the CBD streetscape, did that have external funding from NZTA attached to it?
Yes, I believe it did. However, I would just have to check that.
Okay, it's just because the explanations about that write-off were purely about external funding changing, and my memory hadn't been that had been the driver for the change in that program, but I'm happy to.
There's two things. There's two things at play there. So there is obviously the funding of that work, but more importantly is when that work is now going to be done, and it's too far out for our accounting standards to be able to leave as a work in progress. So that's the main driver there.
Yes.
And because we didn't get the funding as part of the 24th to 27 NLTP, that's why that moved.
Yes, and I understand from the answers and the questions that was why we need to write it off, but more, my point is the explanation given in the annual report about why we're writing it off refers only, I haven't got the page in front of me, seems to refer only to changes from Waka Kotahi's external funding, and so that was my question more about whether that was the reason, because that hadn't been my recollection, but.
Yeah, that was the reason. So you'll remember the November transport paper where we reset the program, and as we didn't get the funding that we needed to carry on that work, we've deferred it. And so that is the main driver for it, because it's a subsidisable piece of work.
So did the CBD streetscape work we had put to the outer years during the LTP process though, not after the NZTA funding had been approved? That was a few months later.
Both reached the street out through the middle of the LTP, and then some of the early work then also got deferred as part of the 3-year set, and that's what's pushed us outside the time frame.
Okay, and just my final question is the 2.4 million write-off. I realise that's money that's been spent in previous years. So what is the impact of that to the bottom line for this year's accounts? Is it just less on the debt side and more on the operational side, or?
No, so there's no impact to the new current year.
I'm sorry.
That's a previous entry. So it was previously funded and borrowed in prior financial years. This entry is only a paper entry, just reflecting that we had to write it off from the balance sheet to the profit and loss.
Yeah, I realise it's paper entry for the year that we're looking at last year. So what I'm trying to understand is if we didn't have a paper entry of 2.4 million transferred from somewhere to somewhere in the 24-25 budget, what would effectively be different? Where would those differences show?
There wouldn't be ones because we've already borrowed the money in previous financial years, so it's already part of our debt and interest costs that were calculated.
Yeah, and so I understand that the reason that it had to be written off was that it couldn't be debt funded and that it needed to be operationalised. So how does that then come off the operational budget?
So just probably clarify there, it couldn't remain as a work in progress on the balance sheet. It was still funded via debt when we did that work. All we've done now is taken it off the balance sheet and expense it through the P&L to recognise that it should have been an expense, is all that's saying, yeah.
So when you say we've expensed it, what impact does that have on what we've got in front of us?
Nothing. It slightly reduces the net surplus, but it has no impact to the debt and interest that have already been calculated and utilised in other years. It's just
Scott,
just moving it.
is the answer to Karen's question that debt hasn't changed on the balance sheet because we've borrowed the money? Assets are less because we're now saying there isn't an asset, therefore equity is less, reduced. And the reduction in equity is the amount that has been written off in these financial statements.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Debbie. A couple questions here. The first one just relating to the non-financial performance measures where we've achieved 80% and have 20% that for whatever reason and by whatever degree were not achieved. What I'd like to understand is what we do as an organization about those 20%. Like, how does that drive change back into the organization?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I might look to the Chief Executive to add something here. Some of them we cannot meet them due to the change in standards. So the drinking water quality is the one that springs to mind there. The standards changed. We need to do a whole series of capital investment to be able to meet that one. So that's come through the long-term plans. Other ones are as a result of the resident survey. So we can only do our best to look in the interests of the public about how we're doing that. But if their sentiment is that we're not achieving those things, those are going to be pretty hard for us to actually change with anything that we can do as council officers. Is there anything else you want to add, Mr. Chief Executive?
Yeah, through the chair, I think you covered it off okay. There are some in there that we're all aware of, some sitting in the regulatory space in particular, resourcing, those sorts of things come to mind around that. We do report back on those through the quarterly report. But some things that are reported through the resident satisfaction survey, let's just say that all of those things are continue to be work in progress.
Great, thank you. A few detailed questions as well, just out of this summary report, starting on page 54 of the summary report, which is 342 of the agenda. In the right-hand column there, we've got the color-coded bits, and we've successfully split out employee benefit expenses from elected representative benefit expenses, which is fantastic. When we move to the explanations below, the first explanation says that employee and elected representative benefit expenses were over budget. And I just wondered whether in fact elected member remuneration was over budget.
I don't recall it was, and I believe that's because it's set by the Remuneration Authority, and we pay you what is set in that.
Would it be possible to amend the summary to be more accurate?
Yes, we can remove that word in there. That is in reference to the actual line on the financial statement, which is employee and elected member. But we can make that tweak for you.
Thank you. There's several references in the summary report to, and in the full annual report as well, to the publication of the civic participation report. I do recall seeing that come through a committee, but was unable to actually find a published copy anywhere in the library or online or anywhere. So has it in fact been published, or is there an intent to publish that and bring it to the public in an accessible way?
I might ask Liv to pop down and answer that one because I do not know the answer.
Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, we are looking at building it into, we're looking at a lot of our web pages at the moment ahead of the new council and grouping things a little bit better, easier for navigation based on how we know people are using the website. So that's one of the areas that we're looking at, potentially also alongside the customer charter that we're looking at, so that putting some of those things together. And yeah, we are planning on having those printed out and being more visible as part of this process that we're going through at the moment.
Thanks. And just the timing of that then, is that likely to happen before this summary report kind of goes out into the wild?
Yes. Yes, we will definitely make sure that it's available in a presence publicly, but we might just move it around ahead of, I guess we're working towards like that end of the month, early November, to have those changes done. So yeah, it'll be around that time.
Great, thank you. And just finally, Scott, thank you for hanging in there through these questions. Another one just around the demographics information that was on page 11 of the report. I was surprised by the number that suggested 45% of the residents were elsewhere in New Zealand 5 years ago. I just wondered where we had sourced that information from and how it had been validated.
Yeah, that was a really good question. We'll just have to take that one offline and look at it. So we'll aim to have the answer by council next week when we have this back there. And if we do need to tweak it, we'll make that tweak ahead of publication of next week's agenda.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Scott and Debbie. And I'm just like to publicly congratulate Scott on his Emerging Finance Leader Award at the NZCFO conference recently. So we're in the presence of greatness, but we knew that already. It's a very minor question, sorry, but on page 324 of the annual report, which is actually the summary, I think, at that point, there's a paragraph under the goal 3, which is connected and safe community. There's a paragraph on that image there talking about Māori art and storytelling, Square Edge Gallery, and other art and heritage events. And I wondered if that should really be under goal 2, creative and exciting, because that really is the arts and heritage outcomes rather than the connected and safe outcomes.
Yes, we can move that text under that goal. Yep.
And then put something inspiring about connected and safe community in that spot.
Yep, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zadding.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Morena. My questions were about the commentary on the climate change and sustainability, which is on page 31, and then there's more detail on page 121 of the main document. And I was just curious, as always. We hadn't made mention of any of the newer innovations that we'd been doing preparatory work for, like the Green Building Fund or the Community Climate Action Plan. And I just wondered, what was the reason for omitting those?
I might ask a friend to pop back down to the table.
In regards to, say, the climate change community plan, I think we do have a reference to it, but it was very, very early days within this financial year, so the bulk of it that we've been doing with the public has been in the July period, so will be featured more heavily in next year's annual report. Okay. Yeah.
Anything about the Green Building Fund being established?
I might just look at Adam for an update on there, because I think that's a soon thing.
Apologies, I don't actually have Adam Jarvis, acting GM Strategic Planning. Although that, by the text of it, may seem to sit in within the climate change and sustainability team, that's because of its nature with the green building. I believe that is run through the planning team, so I'd need to get back to you on the details of where that's at.
Great, thank you. And just finally, we also, just in this sort of area, we downgraded our target climate risk within that financial year, and I also wondered whether or not that was worth a mention.
Yep, we can make mention of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Mayor.
It's
Crikey,
okay.
that was a Freudian slip,
Okay, I was
wasn't
going
it?
back to the
Apologies.
future, to 2013. Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Debbie. Just a bit further to Councillor Naylor's line of questioning, although it's been a paper write-off, Scott, in your opinion, or perhaps some of the other officers, that streetscape work can be picked up at any time, can't it?
Yeah, so that's exactly, had a chat to our acting GM of infrastructure there. Those designs are not lost.
Yeah.
We will absolutely grab them and start from there when that work gets picked up. It is just a paper write-off, yes.
Right, thank you.
Just, Scott, could you, just a question, but an observation as well, really. Page 16 of the report refers to, provides an explanation to a number of graphs. This is a very minor thing, but I don't think it's particularly clear if it refers to budget, but actually we're not really referring to budget. It is in a box underneath the table, and it actually is a little, it's a minor point, but you might want to consider just tidying that up. And another observation, and perhaps something for you to reflect on going forward, is the variance analysis, note 36. I think it could be a lot better, and I'd ask you to perhaps reconsider that, not for this year, but for future years, how you could make that a more useful note. It doesn't refer to any values. Some of the explanations, if you don't have a detailed knowledge of the organisation, don't really mean anything. So I think that's something you could perhaps think about going forward, if you could take that on. And with that, can we throw it now open to comments? Oh, we've got we have a recommendation in front of us to the council that we adopt the annual report for 2024-25 and summary annual report for 2024-25, and that council note that the final auditor's opinion from Audit New Zealand will be received following the expected adoption by council on the 8th of October 2025 and council signing of the reports. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Naylor. Seconder, Councillor Harpeta. Thank you. We'll now throw this open for comments. My first observation is that we don't get to this position without an enormous amount of work within our organisation. So I'd like to thank everybody involved in getting us to this point. Councillor Naylor and I did meet before this meeting with our audit partner, and Debbie was very complimentary in terms of the way that the council team have worked, and I think that we should take good confidence in the team that we have working for us. I'd like to encourage the team and our audit team to continue to look at ways to spread the workload and get more quality and time into the process. And I think dealing with the valuations up front was an excellent move, but there are more than likely other opportunities that we can adopt to spread the workload, become more efficient and be more focused on the quality of the output. So fantastic progress, and looking forward to seeing it continue. I'd also just like to thank you, Debbie, for your input, and I actually was commenting to the CEO earlier that in the 5 years that I've been involved with the business, we've had a qualified audit report, so it's fantastic to see us in the position that we are today, so well done to everybody. Councillor Harpeter.
Thank you. I just want to say thanks very much to the Chief Executive and to the team. Thank you to Scott and to Debbie for such a positive report. And it is a pleasure to see such a great report for the council and for the team. And so to thank you to Debbie and to thank you to Scott and the Chief Executive. So well done for such the hard work that has been done, and I really want to say well done to the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to pass on my congratulations to Scott, also for his award, and just thank the whole team really on what I believe is really high quality information that's provided to us throughout the year. It's a really positive to have an unqualified audit report. So I do think that needs to be acknowledged. So the overall performance this year, I think, has been really good. Obviously the capital program being a little bit behind what we had planned, I don't actually have an issue with myself. I'm pleased that the increase in debt was only 22.4 million and not 50 something as it had been budgeted for. Looking at the debt, it's, being mindful that our debt has more than doubled in the last 5 years, and that does have a really huge impact on rates going forward, and in terms of the interest and debt repayment costs that have to be really recovered in the years following the drawdown. So, I think there has been significant investment, particularly in the renewal space, actually a little bit higher than what we'd budgeted. So I think that goes to say that we are looking after our assets well and renewing them. I am a little bit mindful of the overspend in the employee costs, and that does point to around about a 7.9 increase from last year, and I think that's something we're going to have to really be careful. Whoever's around this table has to be thinking about going forward how we do things in a way that is perhaps a little bit closer to what the community feels that they can afford to pay in terms of rates increase. Because aside from the capital program, that is the remuneration is definitely one of the drivers that is driving up the rates increases. Just finally, the write-off. I do remain disappointed that we're having to write this off. Whilst it has been confirmed that technically in this financial year it is a paper write-off, it is still money that has been spent in the past, that has had to be drawn down in order to do that work, and that work is currently not benefiting us in any way. Yes, if we pick up the work in the future, but there's no guarantee that work will be picked up in the future. So I do remain disappointed when any money is wasted, and so just wanted to make that comment about the write-off also.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, being that it is a time in the 3-yearly cycle that we experience a bit of stress at times, it was very nice to run into a clear audit opinion here as a low stress moment in our existence around the table. Debbie, I think this is the first time in in my recollection here that you haven't had any questions from us, and some of them at times have been quite pointed. So it is a tremendous result for the city, for the whole community, and would absolutely acknowledge the work that's gone into it from the CE and the wider team to pull this off. Scott, you and your team to assemble the information and provide the report. And just noting that it does reflect not just the core team here at council, it's the CCOs, it's the community groups that we invest in. This is a net effect across the whole community, and it is a really tremendous result for the year. On the financial side of it, I was particularly pleased to see that we are now on a 4-year run of growing our investment goals. That is really important. It's really easy to get new things or attracted into it, but investing in the renewals, in the maintenance, in the keeping the basics going is incredibly important. And we actually have a strong track record now of 4 years of increased delivery and investment around renewals of those basic elements of our infrastructure. Also very pleased to see that the rates and debts come back within the benchmarks and policy settings. So seeing everything in the green, which is just the color coding that was used, but seeing everything in the green in the report was truly fantastic. The area that I do continue to hold interest in, some element of concern is around the fact that despite we investing $200 million, we still have 20% of our non-financial performance measures that are sitting out there in the yet to be achieved dimension. And many of those do sit with the resident survey, which is a really, really challenging thing to move. It's kind of a net effect that takes a lot of things going right to start to move those things in the right direction. But absolutely accept that they are works in progress, and I think that's for all of us, not just for the staff, but for us as elected members as well. But those are the things that do need to be near the top of our priorities going forward in terms of really getting onto those resident satisfaction areas, because ultimately those things map through into reputation, they map through into whether people want to be part of this city's future. So they are incredibly important, while they are incredibly hard, in acknowledging that they are. But you look at the headings around the yet to be met part of the non-financial measures: stormwater, noise control, dogs, libraries, pools, transport footpaths, building consents, housing capacity. These are things that do come up often. We just need to keep them to the fore as we prioritize work going forward to make sure that we are genuinely responsive to community, well informed by the learnings in our annual report, so that we can continue to improve over time. But again, the main message again to the chief executive and the team, to the CCOs, to the community groups that we've invested in, is a huge thank you and appreciation on behalf of the community. Tremendous year and job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zavalin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, to all of that. But also my thanks to everyone, and I was reflecting on reading this that the most recent audit opinions that we've had have not been favourable due to uncertainty of how certain big ticket items will be funded, and that narrative has been translated more widely as the budget is unaffordable rather than the budget is uncertain in specific areas. So it's extremely pleasing to be in a position where we have more certainty shoring up, and that's certainly a new territory for me in my time here. But I think it shows very careful management by our teams, and ultimately this report was so satisfying to read because it really does highlight how much work we do and have done, and how varied and specialised a lot of that work is. So the content is great, and I think the presentation is great too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, it was a very pleasing report to read, and congratulations to the people that were involved in putting it together, because I think it's very visually appealing and easy to understand. So well done for that, as well as all the great deeds that are in it. I just wanted to draw attention, I suppose, to where the bulk of the spending is going, because there has been a lot of talk recently about, what council spends its money on. So when you look at capital expenditure by activity, and there's a very nice graphic on page 19, you'll see that by far and away the biggest capital expenditure has been on roading, followed by water and then wastewater, which I think in anybody's books will be considered the basics. So I just wanted to draw attention to that because there is a narrative going around that council, you know, spends its money on puppy dogs and ice cream, and I thought it would be important. I'm seriously bringing this to people's attention, that this is what we spend the bulk of our money on, and even if you want to go and look at the operating expenditure by activity, what's number one? Roading. So I do hope that some of the people that have strong opinions about how council spends its money do actually take the time to read this annual report and understand where the bulk of the money is spent. So I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, just want to concur with the vast majority of comments. Great work to the officers via the CE, to Scott and Cam, and congratulations, Scott, on your award from your peers, but also to Jess and Liv and everybody that's made the documents very, very easy to read and actually showcases the huge depth and breadth of work we do. When I arrived here, the audit was very much a numbers-based thing, a financial thing, but there's a lot more that the auditor does now around the non-financials. And like Councillor Barrett, yes, there's some stuff we've got to work on, and I know the team are working pretty hard to rectify some of those things. And they're not just a Palmerston North thing, they're actually a local government thing that exists throughout. I think there's still a lot of work to go around affordability and rates, and that'll be testing for the new council, as it is for the whole sector. And look, I just want to talk about the capital program. I know we tried very hard to get a better percentage there, but I just, again, there's some stuff that's out there in the marketplace and that is said that we have a huge capital program. We actually have one of the lower capital programs in the country, certainly amongst cities. I think only Whangarei is a lower in terms of cities. So we do have to fix things. We do have to look after what we have. Yes, we've got further debt, but for people that perhaps don't understand that clearly, it's about intergenerational assets. And yes, we've got well in excess of a couple of $100 million, but we've added a huge amount to our balance sheet. You don't get $2.6 billion worth of assets, but it just doesn't come out of thin air. So you've got to invest in programs. And as Councillor Johnson said, 85% of his, and again, candidates standing for council need to understand this. It is about the basics. It is about infrastructure. Uncertainty around the audit, and thank you, Debbie, and it's nice to see you off with a clean audit and the first one since 2020. And look, I think Councillor Zabellin summed it up quite well. It was the uncertainty that was really the question there. And the two main issues were around waters and earthquake-prone buildings and how we were going to fund those. And look, be really honest, it was like a freight train coming at us. We've been able to put some more certainty around that, with the waters obviously being transitioned into a regional entity, and I think I have some real excitement about how that may actually end up being a real positive for this city and wider region. And also the earthquake-prone buildings, and the government have moved and given us a longer time frame. That's helped us to make sure things don't get slammed into our LTP. But the news yesterday around the new earthquake legislation will help our city as well. So this is really good news. I can't see how we can paint this other than as being probably one of our stronger pieces of reports coming to us, and as it talks about finances and what we're doing in the coming past year and what we're going to looking at coming in the coming years, it's only good news. So I hope there's a good media report around it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation. There are no further comments in the queue, so we can now put this recommendation to the vote. So that's been carried unanimously, 14 for, none against. So, well done, everybody. Thank you again. We'll now move on to agenda item 8, the strategic risk management reporting, April through June 2025, and welcome Stephen Minton, our risk advisor risk, to the table. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Minton, Risk Management Advisor. I'm here to present our quarterly iterative review of the strategic risks that we have. We have 11, as I'll remind you, and this is to present 3 today as listed within the recommendation. The 3 that are being presented today, I would suggest are relatively stable in their risk assessment. With respect to the financial one, and as it mentioned in the previous presentation, the certainty that is coming to bear with respect to local water done well certainly provides some better headroom for the financing one and that going forward, but otherwise everything has been relatively stable and assessed as being within our risk tolerance. So I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Stephen. I'm just interested to understand the process of how you come up with the actions in the sort of risk management frameworks, I suppose, because presumably that's in consultation with staff that work in that area, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I don't make anything up, and I don't describe what the actions are. I may provide some guidance or direction to what I would see as the action owners, but all the actions are agreed with the owners, including in some cases either the general managers or divisional managers.
Okay, so could you just take us through an example of the process that would happen to come up with, say, the attachment that you've given us, for example, risk number 1, failure to meet financial obligations. Just take me through how that's generated so I can understand that.
It generally starts off with just an interview and a discussion around what the risks are and how things can go wrong. I mean, I get known for asking, so what can go wrong here?
So that's with the GM, is it?
That's with the GM
Yeah.
or with either the finance manager or the manager strategic finance.
Yeah.
And we go through where the potential points of failure are, and then we ask, well, what is it that you can do to try and reduce or control or mitigate those things? And from those controls, we then determine, based on a discussion, and perhaps in some cases anecdotal or actual evidence of how they're working, what the effectiveness is and whether or not there's some improvements or additional controls that need to be brought to bear. And so we agree that with the owners of those controls, which in most cases would be the divisional or general managers.
Okay, so how could we be sure that there aren't any gaps in that particular division of council's understanding of the risks or gaps in their understanding of the controls?
I guess it's through an intrusive questioning that goes on with myself and the challenge that we go through to make sure that we are trying to address them. I mean, there are other ways as well to ensure that we haven't missed any gaps, including, for example, internal and external audits. Unfortunately, one of the other ways is when a risk event actually happens, and then we clearly will know that the controls are not working. There's
We'd
nothing.
presumably try and get to it before that. Is there any peer review or any comparison done with other similar councils?
So I do go and look at, I guess what they call them all sorts of different things, but a rose is still a rose by any other name, and what they would be seeing as strategic risks, I do look at them from time to time, and where there's a commonality of a risk description, look to see what the controls are that they may have and whether or not they'd be something that'd be fit for purpose for this organisation.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just looking at, for a start, looking at the strategic risk number 1, particularly the changes that have been made that are tracked on page 29, there's quite a shift in terms of the commentary and the overview and conclusions as to how activity may be funded in the future, specifically around what's referred to as basically the new debt capacity that could be created with the water assets being transferred. Looking at the track changes on page 29, it appears to me that consideration of rates affordability has been deleted out of this, and in its place, the assumption that there's a new mechanism to fund activities. And so I'm just wondering where in the strategic risk register is rates affordability addressed or included currently?
So looking through this earlier today, I did see rates affordability as one of the things. I'm not sure if it was in this or in the loss of public trust. Well, actually, if you look on the action plan on considerations for rating capability and capacity, there is a action or consideration around annual review of adjustments to rates, distribution and makeup to ensure equitability and affordability is applied where possible.
Okay. And so in the decision to change the wording, looking at, once again, page 29, and remove the red part, particularly around removing, having a critical review of needs versus wants may apply some degree of alleviation, consideration of that and that being replaced with that it should help council with greater headroom to finance remaining activities. How is that decision made? And what council direction has been given in order for that shift to occur?
I don't think it's looking to remove the original text from in the context. However, given the changes around the local water done well, I think that it was probably viewed as a more notable point in the assessment this time, given what's happened from when we were here last with the creation of the water entity and the ability to increase or change the funding opportunities and that for the remaining council assets and activities.
So am I not understanding this correctly on page 29 where it says all the red writing, at the top it says removed, and that has been taken out since the last time the strategic risk was presented to us that was there. Now it's been taken out and that's been track changed. And I had understood that the red stuff, the red writing had been removed. Is that not correct?
It's only been removed from the sense that it's not in the conclusion. It doesn't mean that it's still not activities or a view that may exist. We only have limited sort of space that we have to write these things up. It was seen as perhaps being of less context than the change in the funding model with the local water done well. So it still remains, but not as part of the overall conclusion.
Okay, and the new text, which is the green, which talks about having a new mechanism by which appropriate funding of these activities, and it should help provide the council with greater headroom to finance remaining activities. My only understanding of the discussion at this table, when the additional headroom has been discussed, has been that some elected members have said that they wouldn't be interested in using that additional headroom. So I'm just wondering what direction's been given to change these documents to make an assumption that that additional headroom will be used for these activities?
Yeah, the discussion around additional headroom is not around its use, but its ability to provide a mitigation in case of need or decisions being made. There's been no decisions around that headroom being used. If, for example, we were, say, $1 million below our headroom, that would create a real risk for us, and that we wouldn't have the liquidity and options available to manage our financial situation. It's simply providing the flexibility for decisions to be made from a risk perspective, not that we are actually going to use that headroom.
Okay. I'll move on to the next, strategic risk and effective relationship management and stakeholder engagement. In the controls and mitigation summary, the fourth one down there talks about central government advocacy, and the action plan for that item says consideration for budget allocation for advocacy. Now, I understand a few years ago there was a new budget introduced that was for advocacy. I think it was 100,000. That was well debated at the time. That was added to the budget, and I think there was someone in that role for a very short time, and then I don't believe there's anyone in that role now. However, we haven't removed that budget. So I'm just wondering where consideration for a budget allocation for something that has been added and then is not being utilised, why would we then need additional budget allocation for that? In addition to that, would this central government advocacy not primarily sit with the mayor and elected members?
Stephen,
yeah.
I think Scott wants to jump in before you.
On the budgetary side, I can. Obviously, the current update on the next page does provide some answer as well, but Scott.
Yep, I'll just speak to the budget for that one. So there is a $100,000 budget. It has been utilised in the Te Utanganui program, as that is one of our main abilities to advocate for the region to Wellington. Your other comment around sitting also with the mayor, and I believe that is also the case as well. So that budget is still there and is still being utilised.
Okay, thank you. And my other question around this one is I couldn't see the community identified as one of the important relationship stakeholders in this document. And I'm just wondering, have I missed something, or have they been not included for a certain reason?
No, they're not included in this. I mean, we look at them. I guess they're a different class of stakeholder than everyone else we deal with. The community's probably picked up in part through public trust. There's a lot around community engagement and that within the public trust strategic risk. To be honest, I'm not sure it was something that was considered as in that same genera as the community as it is with the other stakeholders that or major stakeholders that we deal with. We can sort of pick that up and consider whether or not it is a stakeholder that needs to be managed through this process or through other strategic risks.
So these reports, just in terms of the process, if there are aspects to these reports that we may not be comfortable with, what is our options in terms of, do we just give verbal feedback on that, or, I mean, obviously we can vote against it, but what is the process for us to have input into the content of these reports?
So on the basis of your comments around whether the community is a stakeholder that should be included within this strategic risk, I will pick that up at the next iterative review and discuss it with the risk owner as to how or what or whether it should be included in one form or another.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, I'll just have, moving to the last strategic risk number 11, which is loss of public trust. A lot of the feedback that I hear from the community around their loss of trust in council is to do with the view that the council isn't listening to them and that they're saying rates are too expensive and they want certain activities to be withheld or stopped or reduced. They're wanting some reduced costs. If for those people, how would this plan address things?
I guess the consultation and dialogue that we have with the community provides a voice into, I guess, the elected members who represent that community. Ultimately, though, of course, we can't please everyone all the time, and can't please anyone all the time either. But the processes are, of course, there to allow that dialogue to come through, or they're being built out or worked up. There's also a matter, I guess, and as you'll see some of the proposals within the controls around ensuring that there's a well-educated community that understands what it is we are doing, and how and what the money's being spent on. Some of the views of the community may be that they don't understand what it is we're spending the money on, and so there are, as you'll see in some of the actions, work being done to ensure that the community's better educated around that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's particularly the one that stood out to me right at the bottom of the page about promotion of what council does. In the case where the recipient is being told that there's all these things that council does, but their view is that council shouldn't do all those things, how do you think that helps their situation in terms of having increased public trust?
There'll be cases where unfortunately it won't.
Yeah. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stephen, for these three areas consolidated into the report. We'll just go through them in order. Around the first one, in terms of failure to meet financial obligations, I guess the question that I have there around key controls and mitigations is kind of how far ahead do we look, and how broadly do we look for things that might significantly compromise our key controls?
I'd say that if we see things on the horizon, then we would raise them as a potential issue. How far do we look ahead? We wouldn't look 30 years ahead, and I'd suggest we probably don't look 10 years ahead, but we'd certainly look at least 3 years ahead based on the current LTP. If there was something that we saw 5 years out, that we had a degree of certainty, then we would be cognizant of that and take that into account as well.
Thanks. So I guess then in a practical follow-up on that, so our first, well, we kind of have two big, basically, things that we claim here as being very high. One is around rating capability and one's around debt raising. I'll go with the rating capability. It currently says, this is page, so I'll give you a page reference here, 23 of the agenda. Currently says, council has the power to set rates each year at a level. So you're probably aware there's some discussion in the media about council not having that power. And my question is, how are we not recognizing things that could deeply undermine our key controls? Or are we recognizing them and just not bringing them through into this report?
I guess firstly I did write this a couple of months ago, although I guess there's been a murmurings of it. It's difficult to do a risk assessment on things that haven't come to bear yet, and it may be that the murmurings that are in the media and coming from the central government may not come to fruition. It's hard to write an assessment based on the partly unknown at this point.
So I appreciate that. I guess I'm just trying to marry that up with the earlier context of we don't look 30 years out, but we look at least 3 years out. And so, yes, it may be that some things that could be quite damaging never come to fruition, but kind of how are we scanning the horizon to be able to respond if something that's quite a fundamental key control may become much less available to us?
So it is a key control, and if the matters that you talk about did come to bear, then that would have a significant effect on this risk or this key control. The certainty around what that's going to look like at this point is probably not that clear, and therefore it's difficult to bring into the risk assessment given that degree of uncertainty.
So is the intent of doing risk mitigation about foresight or about hindsight?
It's a combination of both, and we'll use hindsight as a measure of what the potential issues are that can come about. But it is forward-looking as well, to the extent that, in combination with the certainty of that as well. If we have absolute certainty that, for example, the bridge that we have is going to not meet the standards in 5 years, and will need replacing, and because it's absolutely certain, then that clearly would be a significant driver. If in the next 5 years the bridge might fall down because of a flood, the uncertainty around that is so unclear that we probably would pay much less weight to that.
I see you would like to just add.
Thank you.
Comments?
Through the chair, you'll recall, these are obviously the strategic risks that we present to committee as well, and my view is that at the beginning of the next term of council is that we do review all of these current risks. You'll recall that strategic risk 11 got added, and I think that predominantly got added as a result of results from the resident satisfaction survey. I also have a view on that actually loss of public trust actually tends to be an outcome of not doing the other things particularly well as well, so that fits across a number of those. But we do need to be looking forward. There's some other things that are potentially strategic risks that are not on that list currently at the moment, but have been on our strategic risks and other organisations I've been in before, which are things like central government reform process and changes and those sorts of things, legislative changes that actually create risks for us, thinking forward, RMA and those sorts of things that are coming up as well, and what does that actually look for us going forward. So certainly one of the things that I'll be having a chat to the team about is whether or not we just revisit this list to make sure that it's accurate for the next term.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for that. A couple more questions. Moving on to the secondary around relationship management and stakeholder engagement, and I guess following on from Councillor Johnson's questions around how action plans are developed. This is page 26. I'm interested in action number 13, the regular review of local government New Zealand membership, and how we got to I guess at least a collective view within the people that you spoke to, that a good way to manage the relationship with LGNZ was to regularly review whether we'd be a member or not.
So this was based at I think that there's a cost of that membership, and that cost is allocated through the LTP, and therefore part of that LTP process, if I'm not mistaken, reviews the budget allocation, which would include a review of that membership, I'm guessing.
So, I mean, on that basis, you just throw the whole LTP into your action plan. We haven't. We've said specifically that we're going to regularly review LGNZ membership, and I'm trying to understand, the question is kind of where does that come from and how we arrived to that conclusion?
Yes, through the chair. All of these actions are reviewed by the senior leadership team and approved before they come into the chamber as well. So these are a list of items that could potentially happen throughout the course of the term to have a look at whether or not relationships are actually working effectively for us or not. If there's some things on there, it's your decision whether or not they need to be in here or not. So to earlier points in that as well is that senior team review these, we sign them off. I'm the owner of this particular one, so I have a much more look across it.
Yeah.
There was lots of chatter around about LGNZ membership, probably when this was created some time ago in that as well. If it's not appropriate now, we're happy to take guidance and look to take things on and off as they need to as well.
Great. Thank you. I'll indicate now, Chair, that I'll have a recommendation in that regard. Final questions, Stephen, are just around the loss of public trust. I guess quite a bit of what sits in the action plan, you know, is business as usual type stuff, trying to improve, you know, what we're already doing. I guess not to categorize it too much, but it seems fairly incremental. And I guess I just wonder how broadly and how far we look for interventions that could actually crack this really challenging area around public trust.
I guess I'd say that we've tried to look as far as we could. Obviously, we had extensive discussions with those that have got strong touch points with the areas here. You know, we always welcome opportunities to be given new ideas for sort of leading the increase in public trust. This is where our current landing spot is, I guess is all I can say in that regard.
Cool. No, that's helpful. Thanks. So just kind of thinking about that continuum of inform, engage, empower, and how that can build or erode trust over time, depending kind of where you're operating there. It seems like quite a bit of our activity is still in the kind of inform side of things. You're mentioning that earlier in a response to another question around just, you know, making sure that people are aware of the breadth and richness of what council does. So have we really looked at that kind of other end of the spectrum around the engage and empower in terms of what we might bulk up on that side?
I guess trust is partly built on the ability of someone to engage and be listened to. That would be a significant driver in my view of trust. And so a number of the themes around the actions that are being looked at is around that engagement and at least people having the perception that they're being heard. Whether they are or not is another question. But that perception also is around ensuring that they have a knowledge base upon which they can form those perceptions. And so much of the work that's being talked about within these controls and actions centre around that. A lot of the others also centre around the previous 10 strategic risks and delivering on them.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the responses and the effort into these three areas, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harpeter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question around the probability of the risks occurring. Where have you got that in this document?
So we take we have our risk management framework, which has got probability tables. And in our background working and operational documents that we use in sort of helping to prepare these, the working papers have got a bit more detail around how we come up with the risk ratings on this.
So the probability of risk 1 occurring is extreme? Is that how I read it?
That's the risk rating, which is a combination of likelihood and consequences. And I'll refer you to the Legend, I think, has got the risk rating matrix in it, has it?
Oh, yeah.
Wherever the matrix is. Which is on page 21. So if there's a risk rating of medium for residual risk, that could have been as a result of it falling into any one of the 7 medium boxes based on the matrix of likelihood and consequence.
So the highest risk for us of all of our risks is which one?
From a residual risk perspective, at the moment, based on the assessment that was done last year, was number 9, significant disruption to council's continuity and or lifeline utility disruption.
Thank you.
So that was done last year though.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Stephen, I had a question and would like some colour around your strategic dashboard. And I know we've been talking about risk 11, but there are in fact 5 of these strategic risks where our residual risk is higher than our targeted risk, and your report states that there have been no changes in those residual risk ratings since we last received this report. So I'd just like a little bit to understand what's happening to bring that residual risk back in line with our target risk, and why are we not making progress, and how should we feel about that as an organisation?
So there are 3 on here, all of which are above our risk target or risk tolerance that haven't been reviewed this year. So it's coming up for a year since they were reviewed, and so over the coming month or so, we will now start to do work on reassessing where those risks are. Obviously, there was a list of action plans that were included in those strategic risks last year. And so my assessment over the next few months will be an assessment of where we are on those action plans and whether the actions and outcomes from that is enough to move the needle on the residual risks towards or below their risk tolerance.
So are we not treating these as a priority? I mean, why are we happy to sit there and not follow up, make sure that we're taking progress and closing that gap and improving our risk profile?
So there is work being done. Obviously, because they were at the higher end, there was a lot more work to be done. Obviously, from an operational perspective, we are aware and continually monitoring from an operational perspective where the actions are going. But it's probably felt that, I mean, I can say that of all of the ones on here, there has been work done, so the needle will have moved based on the assessments that we've done internally around the operational nature of some of these risks. It's just that it's not been presented within the strategic form.
So do you feel, Stephen, that there's clarity around accountability and responsibility from the senior management team around who owns these risks and who is responsible for delivering on the actions to mitigate the risk?
I feel that the risk owners, which is one of the members of the SLT, it's made abundantly clear that they are the risk owner and therefore are accountable. I mean, the chief executive has just fessed up that he does own one of them there.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm happy to comment on that. I feel very accountable to these risks that I'm responsible for, as well as my senior team. So we do have them reported through the senior leadership team through our agendas, and that as required and needed, and that we are keeping a close eye on them, and appreciate the comments from this committee in particular about things that we could improve on.
Stephen, do you think it would be possible in future reports to perhaps just where we are outside of our risk target to actually just provide a bit of colour on when we might see that gap closed, and if there are any issues, I think, or if there's been a change in context, I think that would be very useful for this committee to understand.
Okay.
Through the chair, perhaps just to get a little bit more sort of guidance from the committee around that, what we could do is that instead of these coming up to every committee meeting, is that once a year we just bring all of the strategic risks back at one point in time, rather than coming in pieces.
My own view on that would be I'd be less comfortable with that. I think seeing it on a more regular basis is appropriate and gives confidence that we're going in the right direction and we're abreast of any changes in context that may be occurring. So we'll throw that now. We have a recommendation. We have some. Okay, so we've got 2 additional recommendations which we will take first, which are about to be presented on the screen. we can take them separately. Okay, so we'll take these additions to the recommendation separately. So the first, do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Barrett, to speak to this recommendation.
Thank you, Chair, and happy to speak to this briefly, that Action 13, regular review of LGNZ membership, be removed from Strategic Risk 5 action plan, and thank the Mayor for seconding this. LGNZ, comes in and out of favor, has strong years and less strong years, etc. My understanding is we're a founding member of LGNZ from the late 80s. So we've been a member of this for the last 30-some years. And when I think about what would be effective or ineffective in terms of relationship management, constantly or even regularly threatening to walk out the door just doesn't seem like a good way to manage a relationship. There may be some point in the future where, something happens and we have to respond, but I don't think that a regular reflection on walking out the door of an organization that we've been part of for nearly 40 years is a helpful way to strengthen ourselves, to strengthen the sector, to build those relationships. We have all the involvement and engagement through Zone. We have the significant advocacy, et cetera, et cetera. I won't take the full 5 minutes, but would ask that you do please support this. It's just not helpful having it in the action plan. Thank you.
Mayor Smith has some comments to add. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, just to back up Councillor Barrett, I think he summed it up well. We have good years and we have not so good years. And look, I've questioned the membership at times, but I think, what is the alternative? We just go cap in hand as an individual council to advocate to government, central government, to other entities, is weakening our position. So if we keep putting this as a strategic risk, we're putting it on the chopping block every single time, and I just don't think that's quite right. We can always bring it up and have a dedicated vote or debate on it, but putting it on the chopping block every single time, I think, as Councillor Barrett says, is a little bit unfair. I mean, we actually do that and people around this table sometimes relitigate the same things every time after time after time after time, and I just don't think that's right. So I think this is another one of those. So I would like to think that I think we're in for perhaps some better years and LGNZ's membership. We've got to get value out of that as well. So yes, there is a membership fee with it, but we've got to drive the value out of that. So I think putting it on the chopping block is not smart. So I hope you can support this.
Councillor Wood, you wanted to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
I just wanted to comment briefly on terms of the timing around this. Not necessarily that I object to some of what's being said by the mover and seconder, but more that we're only 2 weeks out from an election. I don't think it's appropriate for this council to be removing actions or considerations for the next council. I think it's completely appropriate for us to add things for that council to look at, but at this point in time, I wouldn't support taking things off the list. I don't think this falls into the time after time category that the Mayor's referring to. In fact, we haven't had a vote on LGNZ membership in the 3 years that I've been here. 7 councils have left LGNZ, including 2 of New Zealand's 3 major cities. So it isn't a fringe or absurd or unusual suggestion that it's something that gets regularly reviewed. And I think it's quite normal that if you're a member of an organisation that when your annual subscription fee comes up, you go, are we still getting value out of it? So I don't think it's right for us to take this off the menu of the next council to consider. So I'm quite happy to leave it as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Micklade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For many of you, I think you know that I've been a very strong advocate of LGNZ and why we should actually remain in it. So But today, I think in relation to this particular recommendation before us, I will not be supporting this because I think as a council, it is always good practice for us to review whether we're getting good value out of this, which of course we've been getting good value out of it because they've been advocating for us to the government on major issues, and we're not Auckland or Christchurch or Wellington who can advocate for themselves due to the significance of the economic muscle around the country and that sort of thing. But personally, I think I'm sort of in the same line as Councillor Wood in the sense that I think we should give the new council an opportunity to vote for this, to review this, and has been mentioned earlier on, since I've been on the council, it's been 4.5 years, we've never had the opportunity to vote on our membership anyways. So this should still remain, in my opinion, should not be removed and should be remaining there in order for us to continuously review our membership of LGNZ, to ask questions whether we actually are getting good value out of this, and also to give the community also an opportunity, because it says here that it's going to get reviewed as part of the LTP. Give the community also an opportunity to have a say on this, and let them guide us in making that decision as well. Or let's also hear from the community and see what they think about this. So personally, I will not be voting in favor of this. I'm not saying this because I'm against LGNZ. I've been a very strong advocate of LGNZ around this table, so that should not be taken away. But I'm just saying that in this particular time, I'm of the same line as Councillor Wood in saying that we should also leave this for the next council to also decide. So yeah, I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zavalin.
Thank you. I will happily support this this amendment or this additional recommendation, because I was looking at the title of this particular risk, and it's ineffective relationship management and stakeholder engagement, and the risk description there is a breakdown in relationship principles and engagement with key strategic partners to the extent that it influences the ability to work together. In real life relationships, it doesn't strengthen anything to signal intent to review it on the regular. Those reviews of how things are going occur organically. Having this in the action plan, I think, creates risk to that relationship rather than mitigates it, so it's counterproductive. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
I will be supporting this additional recommendation. And just, it occurred to me while a couple of councillors were talking about their disappointment at not being able to have a vote on the matter, that perhaps they weren't aware that any councillor can put up a notice of motion at any time during the course of the term, if they can find a seconder, and then we can have a debate and a vote on something. So if those councillors feel strongly about an issue, I'd just like to remind them that that avenue is available to them.
Thank you, Councillor. So we, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you to colleagues, especially Councillors Zavalin and Johnson, for making two of the strongest points in terms of what should come through in a right to reply. Absolutely. This is about what's effective in managing a relationship, and any important relationship looking to walk out the door on a regular basis is deeply counterproductive. Look, LGNZ is an absolutely core function in terms of democracy and how democracy actually works in this country. I'd put it to you, that to have 70-some different local governments all running around on top of, across of, underneath each other would be a great way to actually undermine the whole of how we do local government in this country. And so pulling it apart, holding up examples like Auckland and Christchurch as kind of paths we should follow, strikes me as quite problematic and quite risky. We're a relatively small city, yes, a provincial capital, but a relatively small city, and the way that we move forward collectively to engage with government on the big issues, to engage with structure with our neighboring zone colleagues is through the LGNZ membership, and it's been there for nearly 40 years. Let's take it off the chopping block, as the mayor said.
Thank you, councillor. So the queue is empty. So we have a recommendation moved by councillor Barrett, seconded by the mayor. I think we can now put this to the vote. 11 for and 3 against, carried. So we now move to the second additional recommendation, which has been moved by councillor Naylor and seconded by councillor Barrett. So we'll hand the microphone to you, councillor Naylor.
Thank you. This is on the same strategic risk in terms of relationship management and stakeholder engagement. When I read through this, it did seem to me to be a glaring omission that we haven't included the community as a key stakeholder that we need to invest in terms of our relationship management. So this is, and looking through the other strategic risks, I don't think it's well covered in any of those either. So this is just simply, I mean, I would go so far as to say is that the community are our most important relationship. So I think we need to have them included here. So this would just be asking that they are included, and that way there can be some actions and considerations that come out of that that can be incorporated into this plan.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I won't be supporting this because strategic risk number 11, loss of public trust in council, is all about the relationship with community. I'm not saying that relationship with the community isn't important. It's very important. It's so important that it's got a strategic risk all of its own. So I think you're only detracting from that if you add community in as a key relationship in strategic risk number 5. And if you look at strategic risk number 11, there is actually a reference in there to refer strategic risk number 5. So there's obviously a link, but to my mind, the relationship with community is fully covered, as it should be, with its own strategic risk. And so there's no need to add it into strategic risk number 5. Risk number 5 is strategic partnerships with specific organisations. If you include community, then in that sense, if everyone's a strategic partner, no one's a strategic partner. So I do think that the two things are separate. I understand the intent, which is to put emphasis on the value of relationship with community, and I agree with the intent, but I just don't agree with the action. I think that's fully covered under strategic risk under 11, so I'm not going to support it.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Yeah, I did suspect that point may come up, and the Chief Executive has said a number of times that he considers that strategic risk 11 is really a consequence of us following through on the actions of all the other 10 strategic risks. And in fact, if we were doing all the 10 strategic risks well, we actually wouldn't need this. And I think from my perspective, adding it in at the relationship point is a more constructive, proactive, and shows intent. I think if we're having to wait to the loss of public trust before we address it, which is more of an outcome of us not delivering on the other actions in the first 10 strategic risks, I think that's not the best approach. I think I'd rather a proactive approach on this, so I would encourage you to support this.
Thank you, councillor. I think we're in a position now where the queue is empty, so we can put this additional recommendation to the vote. That has passed 8 for, 5 against, with 1 abstention. We can return to to the substantive recommendation. And can I have a mover? So moved, Councillor Happer, seconded Councillor Naylor. We'll now throw this open to commentary. And Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, and thanks to Stephen and the wider team of officers that have fed into this. This is probably the best and fullest conversation that we've had around risk for some time, and I think the debate around the table has been really good. Couple of comments from me around risk stakeholders, especially around central government. I think the changes to government legislation are just massive for us. They sneeze and we hemorrhage, sort of thing. It really does. And look, loss of NZTA funding is one. And Councillor Dennison and I were just talking about the impact that's had for us has been massive, and will continue to. And as assets really are either getting run down, or we have to backfill the gaps, and other government departments. The higher waters legislation. I mean, I talk about safety, and where government departments just are exiting spaces that they've traditionally been in. It's immense for us. So that is a real risk for us. And then the other one is probably around a risk 11, is the increase of misinformation. It's huge, and even in this city, we have seen heaps of it. And I think, to the media's point, the loss of mainstream media from New Zealand in general has contributed to that. So now the source of truth is Facebook. Whoopee. And look, we've just seen so much misinformation going on. And so how do we mitigate that? And I think there is an element of better education for the public. So I'm all for trying to get to the community more. And look, our annual report this morning, I would hope, would be one part, because we just hear misinformation about what we're doing, and clearly we are doing some things right. So we've got to try and get that in front of people. And I just want to say, look, it's been a really good debate, understanding everybody's different views. But at the end of the day, we've just got to try and work with the challenges we have at times, and try and mitigate some of that by educating people a lot more about what council does. And yeah, thanks, Stephen, and the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Firstly, Mr Chair, do we need to change that recommendation to as amended, or if we're just receiving the assessments, does that need to be included? Perhaps it's a question for governance.
Sorry,
do we need to change the recommendation, given that that 2 and 3 recommendations have passed, do we need to say as amended?
No, I don't think so. I think we're just passing this recommendation. Oh, it is?
Oh, sorry, it's in the second bullet point. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No, that's all right.
Thank you.
So just speaking to the paper as a whole, as perhaps I alluded to through some of my questions, I have got a strong level of discomfort with some of the changes that have been made to strategic risk 1, the failure to meet financial obligations. And whilst this is primarily about the fundability of our activities, there has been an acknowledgement that it is also about the affordability for those funding it. And I'm not comfortable with the deletion of some of that. So just to remind colleagues, we've deleted the part that says that service levels will require decisions that parts of the community may find unpalatable. However, in the face of unsustainable financial burdens and current restrictions on the extent to which funding can be raised, a critical review of needs versus wants may apply some degree of alleviation. We have deleted that part of it out of the strategic risk. Well, if we support what's been put in front of us today, that part has been deleted by officers, and in its place has been included an assumption that we may be able to utilise the additional debt room that is created through the water assets exiting, and that way, that's our way to be able to fund future activities. That is a really big concern to me because that is not a decision that we have made, and the papers do indicate that that decision will be a part of the next LTP. However, if we are embedding that assumption in our documents at this point, then that is preempting a decision that is yet to be made, and I'm really concerned that the impact of us delivering on that is actually a lot less affordable rates. It's much higher rates because as soon as we add more debt, that increases the rates. It's a very weak comment that is currently in there, that all it says that's still in that report is that affordability is applied where possible. Now, that's a bit of a take or leave comment in my view. So given that there's not any other strategic risk that really incorporates affordability, I'm not able to support this in its current form at this time. I'm happy that officers may have taken some feedback, but it's certainly not something that we can just change as simply as the words that we've just changed, the parts that we've changed in Strategic Risk 5 today. In terms of the loss of public trust, in reading through that, I think we need to gain a better understanding of what is actually driving some of the loss of trust from our community. And once we have a better understanding of that, I think some of the activities may be able to be more well aligned. I think for the people who have lost trust in council because they don't feel that they're being listened to, and that activities that are going ahead that they feel that they can't afford, simply promoting what council does will only exacerbate their frustration and exacerbate the loss of public trust. So whilst there is a place for information, I think we need to be mindful that we're not being tone deaf to what many in our community are saying. And so I'll leave it at that. But at this point, I cannot support even really receiving these reports. I think they're a work in progress. There is a lot of good work in there. There's a lot of good actions in there. But to the extent to which this particularly strategic risk 1 has been changed and the assumptions that are implied in the wording, I'm not comfortable to support that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harpeta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very happy to support this document, and thank you very much to Stephen and to the Chief Executive for the work that's gone into this, particularly around number 11, the loss of public trust. I have been hearing quite a lot around water, and people are concerned around water. So I think that what is happening in the social media and what the council's doing in social media, I think has been very good, particularly around the election. I think we're doing a very good job around that. People are talking about the election, but also I think if we can talk more around water and what we're doing around water going forward, I think the council's got a very good social media, and I think we should carry on doing that. And if we can do that and raise a profile around water and what we're doing going forward, I think that would be very good. So I think the loss of public trust is a real concern, but if we can do more and educate our public more on what we are doing going forward, it will help, because a lot more people are on social media and it does help. So I take my hat off to you for what you are doing, and thank you very much for what you are doing going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First of all, I agree with the Mayor's comments that there's significant risk to the organisation through changes in government direction and legislation, and I wonder if we might need to establish an additional risk matrix for that separately. So I'd certainly be supportive if staff felt that that's what we should do, or maybe we even need to give that direction. But that is an area of significant risk for us that I do think it would be helpful for us to consider how we could mitigate that and reduce it, because it's impacting in lots of different ways, both in terms of costs, but also in terms of opportunity costs, where the work that we've been doing has had to be stopped and different directions had to be taken all at once because of government direction. So that, I think, would be a useful addition to the risk matrix. In terms of risk 1, failure to meet financial obligations, I think there's some misunderstanding here about what this risk is about and what it's not about. this is about our ability to finance the things that we've said we can do. And naturally, if our obligations change because water is separated off into a separate CCO, naturally our ability to meet our financial obligations becomes less likely to be a significant risk. That by no means says that we've made a decision to take on extra debt. What it means is that we have greater capacity to meet our financial obligations. And so the risk has changed, and therefore I think it's only right that the commentary change. It certainly doesn't indicate any decision to use that additional headroom. It simply means that that additional headroom is there, where it wasn't there before. It's got nothing to do really with rates affordability, and I think we just need to be careful that we understand what exactly these risk matrices are about and why it is that commentary has changed. Some of us may have strong views about rates affordability, but this isn't the place to be putting that in my opinion. Thirdly, strategic risk 11, which is loss of public trust. There's been some commentary about, public feeling they're not being listened to. Unfortunately, when we hear a variety of views on any issue, and we can only go in one direction, those whose direction we're not going in are going to say that they haven't been listened to. That isn't actually the case. We are listening to all views, and then our job is to assess what direction to go in. There's no way that we can keep everybody happy, no matter what decision we make. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to suggest that if people are complaining that what they want to happen hasn't happened, that they haven't been listened to. And we need to make sure that when we're talking to members of the public, we explain that, well, you have been listened to, but the decision didn't go in your favour. And that's going to happen whatever we do. On any issue, we gather submissions for and against. There's always going to be some people who are disappointed in the decision that we make, but it doesn't mean we haven't listened to them. It just means that we haven't necessarily given them what they wanted. So I think we're all responsible for communication to the public and making sure that we're clear about what it is that we're able to achieve and what we're not. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. One around endorsing what we've heard from the Mayor and now Councillor Johnson in terms of the central government pace and scale of change and the kind of challenge that brings to us. And I guess more broadly in terms of these, however we package it up in terms of what the risk labels are and how we do this, that we really do look to balance these towards foresight so that we're really looking at risks as they emerge. And I guess I'd say given the, what we knew a quarter ago, what we knew a year ago about, what was happening through central government and the kind of likelihoods of those things impinging on our basically freedom to operate, if you want to use that word, as a local government, was quite surprised to not see that feature more regularly in here, especially the financial one in terms of the reliance we've had for the last, I guess, 150 years that we had the right as a community to work out what we needed to do and set rates accordingly, and to depart from 150 years of doing it that way to not have the ability to set rates commensurate with what the need was determined to be in the community is quite a profound change to control, and was surprised to see that it didn't feature in the commentary here. The other point that I'd pick up is around in the trust area where I do think we need to look quite broadly, and I guess the main message here would be for the new council. I think early on in that term of council, I hope that council sits down and has a really good conversation about where they'd like the trust metrics to get to over the 3 years, and how they might hope to get there. Currently, we're in a situation where distrust outweighs trust, that doesn't look or sound like sustainability to me in terms of our social contract with this community. So finding ways to rebuild that is paramount in the next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Chair. I've wanted to make a couple points quite clearly, is around that this will get reviewed in the early part of the next triennium, and so the newly elected council will be able to get their teeth into this and again review every one of these risks and the detail within it. I think I'd agree with you strongly that the regular reporting is important. The environment we're in now is quite dynamic. There's lots of external impacts out of our control, and so therefore that's one important aspect for us to keep a really clear monitoring on these risks. The other one is that I believe the affordability factor is heightened because the rate of inflation since COVID and against wage growth, people are feeling the pinch, and likewise we as a council with the impacts of increasing costs and limited funding. So everyone wants to have an eye on this thing, and so it's important that we take responsibility or recognise that fact. The assumption that Councillor Naylor is bringing up is one that does bring fear, because just because the water entities' assets come off our books doesn't mean it's a free ride for any council in the future to think, oh, we can use that headroom to cover costs that up until now haven't been identified where the third-party revenue is coming from. And I don't think there's an expectation in the community at all that we should be just using the headroom from the assets coming off our books to meet the difference. And so I take your point, but Councillor Naylor's point, but quite rightly being made a point equally, is that these risks aren't tied to those decisions around the budget, and we'll have robust debate around how we fund that in the future and where they get placed in our long-term planning. So I've got every confidence the future council will do that well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zaman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I did also just want to talk to the risk one and financial obligations and the points raised by Councillor Naylor, because in the control environment section in that top box, it does refer to under the current legislative framework. Excuse me, losing my voice. Under the current legislative framework, apart from significantly raising rates, most other methods will ultimately require increased repayments from city residents. So I can see, and it made sense to me that a qualifying statement there should acknowledge that there are limits to that approach. However, the first control there talks about under legislation, council has the power to set rates at each year at the level that elected members deem affordable and necessary. So I feel that that has been covered in Control 1, and the responsibility for it sits in the correct place and the correct process. So having considered that, I do now have some satisfaction that the reference has been made in its proper context, and fees and charges are reflected further down that table as well. But touching on the point of the controls, I am really pleased to see that for all three of these strategic risks, the ratio of effective controls and partially effective controls is reasonably balanced, because we have had other strategic risks where the controls are majority partially effective or not effective at all. So I am broadly with strategic risks quite interested in to what extent the effectiveness or otherwise of the controls that we've got in our action plan factor into where we land in assessing the target risk as well as the residual risk, because it's highly variable depending on the risk we're looking at. It's just a very complex area with many layers, and I do agree that we need to be touching on this regularly so that we're on top of it, because as Councillor Dennison said, it's a very dynamic, shifting environment, and just looking at it as an omnibus every year might mean that the detail and the complexity gets lost in the extensiveness of the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My comments, firstly, I think we've come a really long way. So I'd like to thank the management team, C and Stephen, for getting us to where we are. I really do support this concept of a deep dive and really getting into the risks on a regular basis and choosing several risks and deep diving. My own view, though, is that where we have a dashboard and risks where we are operating outside of our target risk level, I think we could improve governance, oversight and confidence by understanding the steps where we're at and what's changing in that regard. And I'd also like to support the comments around uncertainty, because whilst perhaps one funding uncertainty has been removed, there are other regulatory risks, as the Mayor has pointed out, and that could go straight to the core of what drives our credit rating, and that would dramatically, potentially, change our ability to access funds. So I'd really like to encourage the management team to sit back, reflect, debate, kick that around, and forewarned is forearmed. But again, I'd just like to thank everyone for the debate and for the hard work that's gone into getting us to a point where we can actually sit around and disagree about stuff and talk about how we do things better. So thank you. So we have a recommendation in front of us. Second, so I think we can now put that to the vote. That's been carried 13-4 and 1 against. We are a little behind on the run sheet, but I think it's a good time to break for morning tea, and we'll make up the difference after that. So thank you. 20 past. front desk to present the wellbeing report.
Tēnā koutou. I'm happy to summarise at the end of this, of the previous financial year, the last quarter of the wellbeing report, that we have met most of our training targets to support workplace wellbeing, and that our results from Tui Te Whakaaro also indicated that most of the statements that directly relates to well-being actually indicated a significant improvement, which in my mind indicates that we are hopefully on the right track in terms of the well-being activities that we are investing in. Next step for this financial year is to really expand on this in the spaces of preventing harm. So we will be much more focused in that space for the coming financial year. So that's a summary from me. I just would like to hand over to Wayne.
Yeah, through you, Ms. Chair, just two comments. The first one relates to the turnover, and there's a comment I've made in there about if we continue at a very low turnover, that in the future may be cause for concern. It's not at the moment because we've had higher turnover for a lengthy period of time prior to that. So just to emphasise that. The second one is a correction. There's an error in the ACC lost time when I checked that again this morning. On reflection, looking at it, there's some data that was included that shouldn't have been. So the actual figures in that column on the right for June 25, the first one, which reads 162, should be 99.3, the 140 should be 93.5, and the total should be 192.8. So the commentary below will be incorrect as well, and I'll send a correction out to members of the committee straight after this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your report. So we'll throw that open to questions. And Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Connie and Wayne. In terms of the off-boarding survey results, there seems to have been an increase this year, or this quarter, sorry, in the people citing working hours and working conditions. Has there been a change in expectations for staff, or how can you explain that spike in people citing working hours and working conditions for the reasons for leaving?
I feel like, first of all, I would not expect so this result of the exit survey is a little bit, it's not a lot of people, it's not, the numbers is not very high. So to really understand it, we would need to unpack it with the individuals that has made the statements. So it is something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. I do feel like it has, it does relate to some of the pressures in terms of doing more with less in some cases. So yes, without unpacking it really, I cannot give a specific answer to the increase.
Okay, I suppose that raises the next question of what do you do with the off-boarding survey results other than present them in this report?
So, to me, the Tui Te Whakaaro results is much more important in the sense that we do have big participation numbers. We do keep an eye on this. It's like, for example, the top one, the previous financial year, we had some a clear indicator around career development opportunities being really, really important. This year, for example, we see that supervisory and manager relationships is spiking more. So there's a little bit more data. So for me, it would be to say that I need to keep a real close eye on the bigger information in the bigger survey to see if there's trends that actually correlates with what we get in here. But in terms of this data, as long as we have such low participation rates, I'm very careful to make too much of the data. But in saying that, all of these things are actually addressed through our employee experience framework. We do have action plans that will talk to most of the key elements that has been raised in the exit survey.
So you already have an action plan for dealing with some of the reasons that people cite for leaving.
Correct.
So if, I take your point about small numbers and being careful about interpreting, but if those trends are mirrored in the bigger survey, what is actually done? I'm just keen to know, other than reporting it here, what difference it makes.
I feel like, to be honest, the difference based on this data does not have a high value in terms of determining our priorities of work, but it was a requirement by this committee to have more insight into this data. In saying that, as we are really in the second year into this process, and as it is very manual, the participation rates fluctuates continuously. So I do feel like when we get into a space where it's more automated, we will probably have higher participation rates and we could make more clear assumptions that this is a definite theme for people that actually leaves the organisation. At the moment, it does not add high value or doesn't have high impact on our prioritisation in terms of what the actions will be that we invest our efforts in as a team.
Through the Chair, I'll just add an additional comment to that as well, is that these reports do come through senior leadership team on a monthly basis, so we do get those dashboards to have a look at. If there are ongoing, continuing trends in matters, then Sarah Morris, our GM People and Capability, takes a lead on having a look at what other actions, what else investigations do we need to do to have a look into the reasons why something might be spiking in a particular area. So we do pay attention to it. Even if there is, based on small numbers, a bit of a change in a reason why something was a reason for people leaving before and now it's a new reason, we are looking at those things as well and having a bit more of an oversight at a senior leadership team level as well.
That's a bit more reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, team. Just one question from me on point 1.8, that's on page 38, also around the offboarding survey. I note that only roughly a third of people who left in the last quarter received the survey, and you mentioned, Connie, around automation of that going forward, but just getting an understanding of why such a high proportion of our people leaving aren't receiving that survey at the moment.
The most important reason is that our data points is not integrated. So sometimes there's various factors that contribute to that. So sometimes the people leaders will submit the resignation at a time when the person has already left because they have taken leave before they physically leave, which means they're already gone by the time the survey goes out, is one of the examples. So all of our data management systems is not always well connected, and our payroll, for example, use the resignation date and not the leave date that the person might be using their annual leave, for example, and then we don't get the information in time and then the survey don't go out in time. So that's part of the automation challenges that we are facing and hoping to resolve with better strategic digital platforms.
Understood. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Harpeter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Connie. Looking at page 41, just looking at the turnover by group and looking at the areas that staff are leaving in. So obviously customer and community is the highest area where staff, well, one of the highest. Is that a harder area to recruit into?
Yeah, so planners are our most difficult people to recruit at the moment, and that's one of the areas where planners are. The other is strategy and planning, obviously. So that's one reason. In regards to turnover, that group also includes the call centre, which is where we have the highest turnover. Normally, it's a high turnover area, so that gives it.
So not the parking attendants?
Parking, we do, yeah. Parking's in development and regulatory, and that's an area where we have turnover as well. It's one of those jobs that a lot of people apply for, but not a lot of people are suitable.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Connie and Wayne. The question around 1.9, the Tuia Te Whakaaro wellbeing survey results. It's on page 38. Was just wanting to understand if, firstly, if we had a similar response rate between the two survey dates. Like, is it a similar response rate?
Are you talking about the participation rate?
Yes.
Yes. So I would say in terms of having a valid results that can be generalized, yes. So first time around it was around 76%, and this time around it was above 95%. So we can confidently say that both of those survey time periods, we can be confident in the results of both surveys, yes.
Great, thank you. And has there an analysis been done that looks at respondents that, responded to both surveys to see if it's actually been a movement in
Yes.
people that are still here versus, say, people that have left or new people that have come in? And
So no, we did not go into that level of details, but what we do is we look at different teams and different units in the organisation, and then where there is where there is a significant difference between specific teams and the overall organisation, we will work with our business partners, we'll work with the relevant managers, and then they do have a process that they do individual action planning for those teams to try and figure out, what is the best ways to improve the results for them, or even to celebrate the things that they are really doing well and what other teams could actually learn from people that is doing a really good job. So we try and get the key messaging across that the survey is not it's a starting point to be curious and to learn and to see what can we do better and improve on as we go.
great, thanks, Connie. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just here once again on the Tuia Te Whakaaro wellbeing results, which are great to see. That's 2 years since that was done. Just wondering what the plan is going forward. Is that proposed to happen every 2 years, or?
The intent is to do it on an annual basis. So the previous year we did do a pulse survey check just to see some of the only based on the top and the low scores survey items, and it is quite it aligned very well with the full survey results. So the trends and the engagement, the overall engagement score was similar.
So going forward, it'll be every year in the full survey?
Correct,
Yep.
yes,
Okay.
that's the intent.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Thank you, Connie and Wayne, for your report. So the queue is clear. So we have a recommendation that we received the memorandum titled Wellbeing Report, 30 June, presented to the Risk and Assurance Committee on 1 October 2025. Mover, thank you, councillor Naylor, seconded, councillor Barrett. We'll throw that open for any comments. And there are no, councillor Naylor, thank you.
Just briefly, I think it's positive to see that survey results, in particular the 6% of people who feel that they're being valued at work, I think, or something like that. You know, that's quite a significant shift in the positive direction, so that's really good to see.
Councillor Harpeter, thank you.
You, Mr Chair, just positive to see that the turnover has come down. I know that Wayne said it was also a little bit alarming as well, but it's also positive to see the turnovers come down. People are enjoying to work here, and it's all down to the Chief Executive, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the queue is clear, so we can put this recommendation to the vote. And that's been carried unanimously, so thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 10, the committee work schedule on page 45 of the papers. And who was going to speak to this? Do you want to?
Through the chair, just happy to take any questions that elected members might have on that.
And there are no questions. So we have a recommendation to receive the work schedule dated. Apologies. Councillor Wood.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just one question from me, and perhaps I've missed something, but I recall in all of our other committees that the final work schedule for the term pretty much wound up at that committee's business. There was nothing left on it for the next year, but I note for this schedule, it has quite a few actions carrying on to 2026. I just wondered why there was a departure from what we've done with our other committees, or if I'm misunderstanding something.
Apologies, Councillor Wood, that's administration not being consistent. But all of the work schedules and all of the items that would be regularly on a committee will certainly be under consideration as we work through the new committee structure in the new term. So nothing will be lost, whether it was sitting here or not, I promise.
Thank you.
There are no further questions. So we have a recommendation by Councillor Naylor, seconded by Councillor Harpeter. There are no comments, so I think we can now put this recommendation to the vote. That has been carried unanimously. So now I'd like to welcome Selwyn Ponga-Davis to the table to deal with our health and safety report. This is the high-level health and safety report. Just a reminder that we will move into a private confidential setting to discuss the confidential attachment. So Selwyn, we're in your hands.
Kia ora tātou, e te ui o rangitāne tēnā koe, e te rangatira, Mr Mayor, the Chair, Chief Executive, tēnā koutou, e nā kaimai, e nā councillors, tēnā koutou katoa. Before you have my quarterly report, Health and Safety quarterly report, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Harpeter.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you, Selwyn. Just looking at your critical risks and looking at the 64 of them on the front line, just wondered if you can expand on that a little bit, please, Selwyn?
Yeah, there has been an escalation in poor public behaviour, and I can speak to that more when we move into confidential.
Okay, so you just said there's, okay, you can't talk about it?
We could, but is there any general comment you'd like to make?
Well,
yourself?
there's just been a sudden increase of homeless people coming to the city, people we've not known in the past, and there has been an escalation also in the library space of poor public behaviour. We've been wrapping around considerable support around our people in training, and other operational support has come directly from those front-facing businesses, which we can discuss later.
So of that, 29 times the police were called or notified?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've had to seek police intervention because of this poor behaviour, and there has been a high number of trespassers during that quarter.
Was anything carried out, can I ask if anything was carried out further with the police from that, or am I allowed to ask that question?
Police have attended in most of those occasions. I'm not privy to what actions may have occurred.
Thanks, Mr Chair.
Through the Chair, I might just also add that you might also see a bit of a escalation in numbers as a result of the fact that our staff are reporting more than potentially they used to in the past as well. So that's as a result of Selwyn and his team making sure that people do log requests or incidents and that as they occur.
Yeah, further to that, so you've got comparisons from 2 years ago to where we are at this time, and it has been due to increased reporting, showing confidence from staff.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes, referring to that large number of critical risks in frontline working, I note that this is the report until the end of June 2025, and so we're receiving it with quite a bit of delay. Are you able to give us any indication as to whether or not that trend has continued or got less or got worse in the 3 months since this, in the last 3 months since this only refers to up to the end of June?
Yes, I can report that there has been a decrease. What we have seen, or what I have seen, is an increased police presence across the city, so foot patrols are on the increase. The homelessness that we were previously seeing a month ago, they are no longer present within the square, especially around eyesight. There are some around the library, but the poor experiences from people who weren't from this region, they've all moved on. We haven't seen them in our public spaces. So there has been a decrease.
And what are we doing to get ahead of some of these incidents? So I understand, the kind of training of staff in terms of responding to incidents, but what are we doing in terms of trying to prevent incidents?
Well, what I do from a strategic level is take all the data, so thanks to the staff who are reporting, using AI technology, we're providing predictive messaging to our leadership teams, especially for those who are working on the front line with some analysis, so that the leaders in those spaces can take some operational decisions on how to best mitigate some of those risks.
And are you able to describe some of those operational decisions to give us some comfort that we as an organisation are doing everything that we can to prevent exposing staff to risk?
Thanks for that question, Councillor. So through working with those leadership teams, we have had an increase in security engagement, frontline security to support our staff. We've also increased, you'll see in our data, there's been a significant increase in our frontline worker engagement. we continue to wrap our wellbeing support around them as well and develop policies to protect our staff.
I guess in my mind, there's two clear kind of aspects to this. One is how staff deal with an incident when it happens and the follow-up, which you've described, but there's also an element of what measures are put in place to prevent an incident in the first place, insofar as that can be prevented.
We can only provide support to our staff post-incident. It's been very unpredictable, some of the behaviours that our staff have experienced. So we wrap as much support around training on how to de-escalate these situations with our staff as much as we can.
Through the chair, obviously also other mechanisms like trespass notices and the like and that as well are used, and we do use those on those instances and people that actually causing disruption and potential harm towards staff as well.
Are we able to work with social service agencies, for example, to, I guess, maybe access support for people who might be causing issues in our public spaces?
We have attempted to work, and I have worked collaboratively with our social services, and that's with luck, to engage with our homeless people, which was met with negative responses and abusive behaviour. So we do try to engage with our social services.
So sorry, negative responses from who, Selwyn?
From members of the public, especially those who are homeless. We try to engage with them to seek services for them, but we'll always have been met, with negative responses.
Okay, look, I've got a lot more questions. I might have to ask them in part two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Selwyn. Just going on a little bit from Councillor Johnson there. I just want to, I guess, you've mentioned that there's actually been a reduction in the last 3 months in terms of the problematic people who have caused some of the issues. Have we been working with the outreach worker who works with MASH, which is funded through the City Council?
The results we've seen in the last 3 weeks, not 3 months, but we have attempted, well, not me personally, but I have been working with Luck, but I haven't sought support from MASH. That sits with others who can.
Okay, thank you. And also I note that we've actually had 113 people trained in situational awareness and de-escalation against a target of 50. So is that uptick in the number of people being given training, is that related to the issues which we're talking about today?
Yes, some of that was post-incident training, especially after the unfortunate events that unfolded for one of our workers in Parks. We did some increased training with Parks. We've done training in spaces that we normally don't do, especially in wild base. So some of it is based on post-incident response to training our staff. Some of it is the normal OPSEC training, which takes place with the library staff as well. So there's annual refreshers as well as refreshers for our parking teams as well.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Danielle, did you want to add anything?
Kia ora koutou, Danielle Whakatahi, GM Customer and Community. So our City Library whānau are partnering with MASH Trust and MASH being visible. Unfortunately, we do have a percentage of people who don't wish to engage with services, but the team are working very closely with the Trust to ensure that there is support available and there is regular monitoring of that.
Thank you. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. I'm just looking at page 56 at the training undertaken. I note the emergency medical response revalidation. There isn't anyone that's completed that in the past year. I'm just wondering is there not been the need for that? And I mean, I see the first aid certificate, there are people who have gone through that. How does it work in terms of the emergency medical response? Is there people who have that come up for, does it have to be reviewed within a period of time, or just trying to understand why that hasn't been done?
I might have to come back to you on that question, but what I can say is that when certification expires with our staff, the units will come to us for the refresher training. That's for our basic first aid courses. At this stage, I'm unaware of the specialist type training that we have there. That would be mostly for our SRT teams, I would suspect, but I'll need to come back to you on that one, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 53, the incidents by activity, there's the last column is working at my desk. Now, I wouldn't imagine that's paper cuts. Would that be verbal abuse conversations?
Oh, there's a tab on People Safe, and it will ask you what you were doing at the time. So that could be a verbal altercation, and you may have been walking at the time. For example, if you're a parking officer, they would tick that tab, walking. So in this instance, the tab sitting at my desk would have been the tab relating to the altercation.
Okay, thank you, Selwyn.
Thank you, Councillor. Selwyn, could you just explain to me how safety observations work? Who makes them? Is it the senior management team? Is it you? And where does is it captured in the hazards, incidents and near misses? Can you just colour how that works for me, please?
So we have a platform known as Safe 365. So my team will conduct safety observations or internal audits of our operational spaces. Within that platform also is welfare check-ins. So part of our daily job is to check in on eyesight, check on our front-facing businesses, front of house, and we have a QR code. So we can do a safety observation, have a check-in with the staff and log that through the QR code, which is uploaded into the weekly reports that we provide to senior leadership.
And are the safety observations just unannounced, that just happens? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, that's the best way to do them, unannounced, capture natural activities going on. So in a lot of cases, yes.
Thank you for that. Just one last question. I just noticed that our contractors don't seem to, or in fact, if anything, they've been reporting less in terms of incidents, near misses. Can you just, what sort of activity are they engaged in, and should we be feeling comfortable or uncomfortable about that?
We do regular check-ins with our contractors as part of that safety observation, the Safe 365 audit. I have confidence that things are going well in that space, and when there are any issues, they come directly or go directly to the project managers, and if there's any issues, then we just follow up. But at this stage, I have good confidence in what's happening in their spaces.
And what sort of activities are they engaged in generally? I mean, what are the big contracting activities in our business?
I might hand you over to the GM. He'll have more insight on the major projects, but Fulton Hogan does most of our city contracts, but there may be bigger projects at hand.
Glenn O'Connor, Acting GM Infrastructure Services. Thanks for that introduction, Selwyn, and that's a fair point. A lot of our major infrastructure work is undertaken by the Tier 1 contractors, Fulton Hogan, Higgins, Downers, for instance. Fulton Hogan currently undertake our road maintenance contract, which is a fairly substantial activity for council. As part of that, they have extremely robust operating procedures, standard procedures, QA and reporting. When there are incidents, and there are incidents from time to time, we get that reported as a matter of urgency, and we are actively involved in closing out the incidents, be it an environmental or a health and safety incident. As Selwyn mentioned, I have good confidence in those Tier 1 contractors and their reporting and their safety processes. In fact, as we review our own safety processes, we often borrow some of the best practice from these contractors to amalgamate with our own practices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So the queue is clear. We have a recommendation to receive this memorandum titled Health and Safety Report as presented to the Risk and Insurance Committee on 1 October. The mover, Councillor Naylor, seconded, Councillor Harpeta. So we now move into part 2. We will now move into part 2. So I need a mover for that. Councillor Naylor, seconded, Councillor Harpeta. So we'll put that to the vote. And that's been carried 12 votes for, none against. So just need a couple of minutes to make that happen. Okay, so we have a recommendation, a mover and a seconder there, so we'll now throw this open to commentary.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to comment in general terms that there has been an escalation of incidents involving staff doing frontline working, and my expectation is that not only that we as an organisation provide training and support for staff involved in those incidents, but we also look to see what can be done proactively to prevent such incidents, whether that is additional staff, whether that is additional levels of security in a building, either people or cameras, whether that is working with external agencies. But I do expect that the response to an increase of incidents like this would not only be reactive, but also proactive. So just make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My observation would be that on the risk register, we have a major failure in health and safety, residual risk rated low and targeted risk rated low. When I sit back and reflect on the discussion, and when I also reflect on the fact that the independent review that we recently undertook on health and safety threw up a number of outstanding actions that need to be addressed, my concern would be that we just simply can't ever be complacent in this area, and we've got to keep questioning and thinking about and challenging ourselves in terms of what we're doing across a wide range of activities. So it's not that I'm unhappy or don't believe what I'm receiving, it's just that we've got to keep questioning and making sure that we're doing everything and not falling into the trap of being complacent around this area. So we have a recommendation in front of us. The queue is now empty, so I think we can now put this matter to the vote. So that's been carried unanimously, and that, I think, brings us to the end of our agenda. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. And, oh, excuse me, the Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I just wanted to take the opportunity before we wrap up just to thank you as the chair of this Risk and Assurance Committee for this term of council, and to other officers that have been part of that, but also to the deputy and other committee members. Thank you for your attendance throughout the last 3 years and the work that's been carried out. So especially as being an independent and coming to grips with how local government works, you've done well. So I appreciate your input, Steve, and to others that have been around the table as well. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and greatly enjoyed the opportunity to participate. So thank you all. So I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, and I'd like to call on Councillor Zaberlin to close our meeting with a karakia. Thank you, Councillor.
Nā mi. Kia puta ki te whaiau, ki te ao marama, whakamaua ki a tīna, haumie, hui e, tae ki e, kia ora.